So you were the youngest lawyer to get a 8-figure settlement in Pennsylvania?
8-figure verdict, which would be just the jury verdict. But this was a in-court jury verdict.
What happened in that case?
She was basically blown off by her doctor, basically gaslighting her. She lost her job.
Dang.
Ironically, she actually worked for the same health system that she ended up having to sue.
Wherever you guys are watching this show, I would truly appreciate it if you follow or subscribe. It helps a lot with the algorithm. It helps us get bigger and better guests, and it helps us grow the team. Truly means a lot. Thank you guys for supporting, and here's the episode. All right, guys, we got a catastrophic injury and death lawyer here today, Tom Bosworth, one of the best in the game. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, you've accomplished a lot at your age.
Yeah, it's been an interesting couple years.
Yeah, because I feel like for lawyers, they don't really peak until late, but you've had some huge settlements already at 35.
Yeah, I never thought, actually never thought I'd be a lawyer.
Oh, yeah?
My dad was a cop and my mom was a waitress, so I didn't think law schools would let me in. I didn't think I was up to snuff, so I'm grateful for all the successes.
Yeah, that's a big change. Did you want to be a cop growing up?
No way. my little brother's a cop, so like he followed in my dad's footsteps, like and I love my dad and my brother, but I get ragged on a lot during Thanksgiving for being a lawyer, but I never want to be a cop. I would watch cops and be like, can they do that? Like,
yeah. Cops pretty stressful, but so is being a lawyer.
Yeah, for sure.
There's both different types of stresses, I guess.
Definitely.
And you're dealing with one right now, right?
A couple, I guess. I could list a lot for you, for sure, yeah.
And do you try to separate like the personal side from the legal cases?
It's hard because I think old school lawyers would disagree with me, but I actually think that you need to be emotionally invested in your client's case. Not overly, but like if you're not emotionally invested, I don't think you can be the best advocate. And if you don't actually care, I don't think you can be the best advocate.
Right.
So, but there's a balance there, right? Like, because if I go home and I'm like consumed and I'm like with my kids and my wife, that's not good either. So it's always like a delicate balance. But I think to remove the emotion is bad.
Yeah, I kind of agree, because as a consumer point of view, I've hired tons of lawyers, and when I can see that they're just doing it for money mainly and they're just treating it logically, it almost feels kind of weird.
Exactly.
If they're not a little emotionally invested, because a lot's on the line in some of these cases.
Exactly.
Like your whole livelihood, if you're getting sued for a big amount or something.
Yeah, and all the people that I represent, like they've either lost someone who died, who they love, whether that's their child or their mom or whatever, or they've had a stroke or they're paralyzed, like really big stuff. So if I'm like going in there like, hello, like, emotionless, it's not great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you were the youngest lawyer to get a 8-figure settlement in Pennsylvania?
8-figure verdict, which would be just the jury verdict, as opposed to settlements is out of court agreement, but this was a in-court jury verdict. But yeah.
What happened in that case?
A woman in her 50s had a spinal mass in her spine that was growing over many years, and she was basically blown off by her doctor, her primary care doctor. She was going to him, and he was basically gaslighting her and saying like, oh, well, you're overweight, you work a lot, like, because she was having back pain and eventually numbness and tingling in her legs, which is like spinal cord 101 problem, needed an MRI, needed a CAT scan. He never sent her for one. He never sent her to a specialist to look at her spine or anything. He just kind of wrote it off until eventually her legs gave out.
Wow.
And she ended up on her own in a neurologist's office who took one look at her and was like, holy smokes, like we need an MRI. They found the mass, they operated, but unfortunately by then she couldn't walk without a walker. Her ability to go to the bathroom was affected, her ability to live alone, everything. She lost her job.
Dang.
Ironically, she actually worked for the same health system that she ended up having to sue.
Whoa.
She was a lab tech for that same health system.
After?
No, before, her whole career. So she would be the person, like if you go get your blood drawn or you do a urine test, like she would be the person who would transport that like from the hospital where you are to the lab to like test it, right? So she worked for that company.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then they like fired her because she couldn't work anymore, which they were correct, she couldn't work anymore. But then in court, and this is what gets me about like insurance companies and defense lawyers, is that in court they then like changed their tune and hired a bunch of paid experts to come in and say like, oh, she's really not disabled. She really can work. And when they had had fired her.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That must have dragged on for a while, right? Because the fact you went to court probably took years to get that.
Like 3 or 4.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
I feel like the system's very long.
It is.
If you go the full way.
It is. And the defense lawyers that get paid by the hour, they like love that because whether they win or lose, they get paid.
Right.
So I only get paid if I win. But yeah, it's really overwhelming for people going through the process because they're like, for better or worse, they're like a cog in the system and they kind of suffer those consequences of having to wait.
Yeah. Yeah. I like your way better because I paid the hourly, I paid the retainer model. It just adds up, dude.
Yeah, it does.
For real. Like,
yeah. And sometimes they're like, you're like, wait, I just like called you. And like had like a kind of a normal convo. And I don't love that.
yeah, it's insane. I feel like your model's more aligned with the consumer.
It is, no doubt, but it's also like we get the most stigma, like the ambulance chaser label. Like the insurance industry, the corporate industry has done a really good job at like demonizing victim lawyers, but nobody even knows or seems to care. Like you've had personal experience, but like hourly rate lawyers on the other side where, you know, someone's ruined someone's life and they're negligent and the lawyer knows it and everyone knows it, but they're like, I don't care. I'm going to drag it out because I get paid by the hour.
For real. I got hit with $400K bill. This guy was $550 an hour. So the whole year was $400K.
Yeah, that sucks.
I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, it is.
And they just keep piling it up.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's see. 248,000 followers on TikTok. As a lawyer, that's pretty high.
Yeah.
Was that something you planned to do a lot of social media marketing to acquire clients?
Not even close.
Oh, really?
I was in vacation and my wife was like, who's way more tech savvy than me, like, I wish she was here because she would make fun of me about how little I know how to do on online. But she's like, you should do TikToks. Like I had a TikTok account, but I never got any views. I didn't do law videos. I was like, nobody wants to hear a lawyer. But I did a video on medical malpractice and it got like 40,000 views. I was like, holy crap. So I just started doing them and I do them. I love the ability to spread information and awareness in a way, like I think TikTok does that really well, in a way that reaches a ton of people. So I've gotten clients from it, but I didn't like wake up one day like, oh, all right, I'm going to like push social media. Like I just did it and it happened.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how common is medical malpractice?
Way more common than people realize. There's a study that was done that said it's basically like the 3rd leading cause of death in the country. Johns Hopkins did a study on this. So people think of it as rare, and I think the health industry wants us to think of it as rare, but it's not at all.
It happened to me when I was in like 5th grade.
Really?
Yeah. I went to get my ears checked, and she, I don't know what she was doing in my ear, but it ended up bleeding, and then I got an ear infection, all from just a regular visit.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what to do because at the time,
I was one of those people who just like blindly trusted the doctor before I got into this field. Like I would be the person that's like, well, they said this, so it's okay. And like now I realize like you have to be your own advocate and you kind of have to be savvy and understand that how the system works because it is a system and it is a business.
Right. And one of your tips for people is not to go to the ER alone, right?
If you can avoid it. Now, obviously, like I don't want people to be like lying on the ground at their apartment, like not calling the ambulance so they can get someone. But ideally, you want someone there because you want a witness and you want somebody who's there. Not every case, just about every case I have.
Yeah.
The doctors or the nurses or whoever's on the other side, like either dispute that something happened or go so far as to say that something in the medical records didn't happen, like craziness that is easy to kind of rebut when there's someone else there. But they defend these cases not based on what actually happened a lot of times, but what they think they can get away with.
Absolutely. And some of these prices, man, I mean, I just went to the ER with my friend. She had a panic attack, $12,000.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
It's criminal.
I mean, that's insane for 2 hours of I don't know, they did like a couple scans and stuff, but nothing intense. Like
it's disgusting. Yeah. I think it's a product of like politicians sucking.
Yeah.
Meaning like not holding corporations accountable because like the only reason they can charge that much is because they're allowed to.
Right.
And it's just, it's out of control.
We asked for an itemized bill and they're making us mail a letter like this crazy process that's going to take 3 weeks just to get the itemized bill.
Dude, you should fight it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems
Just for the principle of it, but like they get away with it.
Yeah.
And I think from their vantage point, they're like, oh, well, even if they fight this, like maybe we'll settle it for 10,000, but that should never cost that much.
I know.
And that's the reality.
I might fight it just out of principle.
Yeah.
You know? You also recommend people not to use baby powder, which a lot of people do, right? A lot of people use that for their babies.
For sure. Yeah, there's been in the Johnson & Johnson cases involving, technically it's called talc powder. I mean, the brand name is baby powder, but they found asbestos fibers in some of the Johnson & Johnson product. A friend of mine, a colleague, Mark Lanier, who's a really well-known civil trial lawyer, got a multi-billion-dollar verdict against Johnson & Johnson. I think he was the first lawyer to expose the asbestos in the talc powder. Prior to then, there had been litigation, but there hadn't been a focus on the asbestos, and it can actually cause ovarian cancer.
Jeez.
Yeah, so mostly women, that have used it since they were little kids and babies, have been really exposing themselves to this carcinogen, which, doesn't mean that every person that's used it's going to get this, but there's definitely a causative link.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy how products we used on a daily basis growing up are now, we're finding out they cause cancer and all this stuff, health issues.
Yeah.
Like even like toothpaste and like deodorant.
Floss. Everything.
Everything we use growing up every day. It's nuts.
It really is, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of money for lawyers, though.
Yeah. I'd rather the world be safe, but but it is true. Yeah.
Now with Roundup too. I mean, that was a daily thing on the lawn when I was growing up.
Yeah, that's crazy. Monsanto, the all-loving Monsanto, made Roundup, and it's interesting because they've been fighting these cases in court for years, and the main ingredient that is alleged to be bad is glyphosate, so Monsanto took glyphosate out of Roundup, remarketed it without glyphosate, put it back on the shelf, but then they go into courtrooms and say there's nothing wrong with glyphosate. So there's this tension in these big corporate cases, there's this tension between what is real and in reality, and then what the companies actually do in a courtroom.
Right.
It's really interesting. I think most people assume like they're playing by the rules, and they're not. They're just like manipulating evidence or trying to manipulate evidence to get an outcome. But
interesting. Yeah. Oh, so they removed it completely, but in court they're saying it's fine.
Exactly.
Wow, I didn't even know about that. Yeah, I had a doctor on, Lane Kilpatrick. He said glyphosate's in 60% of rain now.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It's crazy.
Like PC, I don't know if you know about like PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, another Monsanto product. Thanks, Monsanto. But they're like in babies' blood, and like I actually am involved in a case in my hometown in Massachusetts, which was one of the biggest PCB Superfund sites in the world, where I represent a bunch of kids who have cancer, who people don't believe me when I say this, but their playground in this elementary school was built with PCB drenched soil.
Whoa.
That General Electric, the company, sold to the town back in 1950 to build the elementary school, but they used soil from their plant that had been drenched in PCBs. And PCBs have been banned since 1979 in the United States from all use. So think about the things that we already consume that are terrible, that are legal.
Yeah.
Like even our country said in 1979, like, we're not doing this anymore.
Wow.
But they don't biodegrade.
Oh.
So they're just permanently like in the environment.
That is crazy. So kids were playing on that playground for 70 years.
The school's still open.
And
so
it's still there? People are still playing on it right now?
If you look at the playground, like a picture of it, there's in the background you can see the landfill. The PCB landfill, like the mountain, it's right up against the home plate backstop of the baseball field.
That is terrible. And these kids are just playing on it, not even knowing, and now they have cancer.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's terrible, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, if our country banned it, that's next level.
But it's like a small town I grew up in, right? So it didn't get as much exposure as it ever should have. And I was like, this is messed up.
Yeah, that's
like,
super messed up. So a lot of this just comes down to big companies looking to make margin and not really care about side effects.
100%.
Are you interested in coming on the Digital Social Hour podcast as a guest? Well, click the application link below in the description of this video. We are always looking for cool stories, cool entrepreneurs to talk to about business and life. Click the application link below, and here's the episode, guys. That seems to be like most of these cases.
Yeah, and the companies, people don't realize how sinister it gets because a lot of the companies actually, they literally bake into their financial calculations the litigation risk. So it's not even like an oopsie daisy, like, oh man, this, like, what a, no, they're like aware of it and know it's going to either hurt or kill people. The most famous case is the GM ignition switch case, which was a products liability case where certain General Motors cars were defective. The ignition switch was defective and was causing all these unintended crashes. GM like knew about it, like, and they wrote this internal memo basically calculating how many people are going to die, how many people are going to get hurt, and how much are we going to have to pay out.
Wow.
And then the conclusion was something like, and I'm paraphrasing, but the conclusion was like, like it's like they looked at their numbers and they're like, well, we're going to make a lot of money. And that case came out through civil jury trials, which is why civil jury trials are really important. One of the reasons, but you know, that's something that, like, as a member of the public, like at least me, I would never think that would even exist.
Yep.
But that's real.
That's super sinister. I thought it was they just didn't know and they weren't aware. But the fact that they're building it in advance, that they're pretty aware of the health risks.
Definitely.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
That is scary, man.
So I'm here to lighten the mood.
Yeah. No, this is important to get out, though, because people don't even know about this.
No.
For real. They just see the lawsuit and think it was an accident, but it was all planned.
Yeah.
Wow. You were just baked into their numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
It's effed up, man. So you started your own firm 2 years ago?
A year and 6 months ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was that process like? Was it tough transitioning into that?
Yeah, it was an unexpected transition for me, and but it's like the greatest thing in the world. I love it so much. I don't know about you, but
no, I love it.
I like being my own boss.
Yeah, I think it's good to get experience working for someone else or mentored, but nothing beats your own. I mean,
No.
You're just in control.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good feeling.
Also, everything falls on you, though.
That's true. The risk is higher, much higher. But you had that safety net from working for X amount of years beforehand. So
Right, exactly.
I think that's a smart way to do it. Some people dive into it right after college and they're already in debt and it's tough.
I also think our generation is more willing to take on that risk. Like the old school mentality was like, you get a job and you, like my parents and like my grandparents, like they're like, you get a job, you never leave.
Right.
Like, don't leave your job. That's crazy. I grew up in like a blue collar household. So it was like, you know, you get a job, don't screw it up. But I think we're in a totally different age now, especially younger people.
Absolutely. You also told people not to use self-drive on their Teslas.
Yeah, man. And I'm going to get Elon coming after me for this. But I don't proclaim to be a software engineer or necessarily an expert. But there have been software engineers at Tesla who have come out and talked about sort of this tension between where the technology's at and what the leadership of the company is telling the public about it. Like, you know, in every innovation and every technological advance, you want to push things like that, which I respect and understand. But at the same time, there has to be consideration of safety. So I think even within the company, there's been kind of a sort of a sticking point between, is this developed enough? Is this reliable enough? Is it safe enough? Versus let's get it out on the street. Right. And I think you've seen some of the effects of that with some of the crashes that have occurred with the technology. But I probably get called a hypocrite for this, but I do on balance still think Tesla as a company is doing a tremendous amount for safety.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the overarching numbers and what they're doing, I do think they're environmentally too.
I have one. I'm a little scared. I'm seeing these conspiracy theories about kill switches. Have you seen those?
No, what's that?
They'll be able to shut your car off from like a distance.
That's freaky.
So you're just driving 80 miles per hour and they just shut it off.
Like the company?
Like just in general with electric vehicles, like a hacker can get in and just shut your car off.
That's terrifying, and it also seems possible.
I'm
not like an expert, but that's freaky.
I mean, hackers are good these days.
Yeah.
You ever deal with any cases like involving hackers?
No. Thank God.
Well, sometimes these hospitals get hacked and all your data gets leaked.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
It happens to law firms too.
Oh yeah.
Which is terrible for like a client, right? Because like your most personal and sensitive information, your health records, all that.
Yeah. And a lot of these hospitals seems kind of outdated with the way they store and keep information.
For sure.
And that's probably why there's a lot of misdiagnoses and stuff, because a lot of it's handwritten still. The doctors have terrible handwriting.
Yeah.
Do you see that a lot?
Yeah, I'm like going through records, like, what is that? Like, and then you have to take their testimony, and you're like, what does that say? I've even had some of them like, I don't even know. I'm like, you wrote it.
Yeah, at least they're honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I could barely read my own sometimes.
Same.
I mean,
Yeah.
when I'm in a rush.
Oh, dude, you should see me during trial. I write like in big letters with a Sharpie, like on a notepad, but like you wouldn't be able to read it if I paid you. It's not good.
Do you raise your voice in trial? Are you very animated?
Sometimes, but not all the time. Like I think you have to be authentic. Not that you're not there to persuade and you're like representing one side, right? But jurors are human beings, and human beings have really good meters.
Right.
Excuse me. But they have really good ability to look at someone, I think, and say like, are they being authentic? Do they mean what they say? Are they being sincere? And I think if you can't do that in a courtroom, you're in deep trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
So some lawyers brag about their record. They're like, I've never lost a case. Is that something you care about, your winning record?
I care about it, but any lawyer who's like the top creme de la creme trial lawyer, like they've lost cases.
Oh yeah.
They don't talk about them as much. Like I've just lost my first trial.
Oh wow.
A couple months ago. And so, but I found that like in the field, it's like taboo to talk about your losses.
Yeah.
Which I think is stupid. I mean, like the best trial lawyers in the world lose cases. And if they're being honest, and I've talked to them all, they're like, yeah, if you're trying enough cases, you're going to lose some of them. And you're going to win some cases that you should have lost, and you're going to lose some that you should have won. But the important part is knowing, frankly, in my field, the insurance company and the defendants have to know you can go in there in the courtroom and cause damage and get a big verdict. Like otherwise they're not going to change.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Do you ever see these companies change at all after big verdicts?
Only after like repeat blows.
Okay.
Like I think there's always this like initial, when there's a big verdict, there's usually an initial denial phase by the company of like, we're still right and we're going to appeal. But over time, like, and you see this with Roundup, I think they've kind of racked up some big verdicts. In an ideal society, you want to see them change. Do they actually? I think sometimes, but I also think a lot of times they're like, well, it's just the cost of doing business.
But you hear that all the time, these big companies. And I still see Roundup in every store I go to. I don't think they stopped selling that.
Yeah, no, they didn't.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to touch on the Prime stuff, but that's how I found out about you. That Prime video you made.
What's Prime? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, that's been a wild roller coaster for sure. Yeah.
What compelled you to make that video? Were you really passionate about it?
Well, so I was contacted, and a lot of people, I think this got lost in translation, but I was contacted by a father of a young boy who's 10, who's actually was just hospitalized. He has leukemia. And so he was drinking a lot of Prime. And the dad didn't come to me saying like, oh, I know Prime caused it. But he had already seen the class action lawsuit, which I didn't even file, but which alleged there were forever chemicals, which they're just forever chemicals are just nasty. Yeah. And so, you know, this is what I do for a living. So it really wasn't anything other than another case I was going to investigate and still am investigating. More will be revealed on that front. But I did the video because I did think it was a matter of public importance. As we sit here today, think it's a matter of public importance. Whether or not the allegations are true or not, I think it's something people ought to know, right? Right. And there's been a lot of blowback, like, oh, you can say anything in a lawsuit. Like, yes and no. Like, you can't say anything. Like, if you say things that are unsupported by evidence or false, there's specific rules in the law that allow the defendant, in this case Logan Paul or Prime, to file a sanctions motion against whatever lawyer filed it. So there's ways for defendants, if they really believe the allegations are way out of left field, to address that. As far as I can tell, Logan Paul's never done that. Prime's never done that. So it begs the question, you know, where does the truth lie? And I think That's why we have court cases. It will play itself out. But I don't regret talking about it, and I don't, despite getting a very, very aggressive letter from a corporate law firm.
Yeah.
A corporate law firm, might I say, who represents chemical companies and big corporations involved in all sorts of toxic lawsuits, also representing Prime. So that was interesting. But I deal with those people all the time.
Yeah.
So.
I used to be so scared of cease and desist when I was younger. Like, for real.
You're still young. What are you talking about?
When I was in my teenage years doing e-commerce, I would get some.
Would you really?
Yeah, and they
For
used
what?
to scare out of me. Just like people just send them on Shopify if you have similar products.
My wife did e-commerce.
Yeah, so she might have even got one, right?
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, but now they're just like whatever. I mean, there's levels to it. If you get a demand and then you get like a lawsuit.
Well, what's funny is, I don't know, funny, but I've got all these people commenting on my video, like, I think they're like 17, 18-year-old kids.
Yeah.
And I was 17 and 18 too, so no hate, but like they're like, "You're done, bro." I'm like nah, like I'm good. And like you're gonna be like without a lawyer. I'm like, I have multiple lawyers in different states, so I'm not.
You probably went to law school with so many lawyers. I mean, they'll just help you out.
Right.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But
dude.
there is honestly, there's an irony here, in my opinion, with like Logan Paul made his name, for lack of a better way of putting it, like on social media, like doing videos, like being an influencer, right?
Yeah.
And my video that sparked this whole thing which got 16 million views, was speaking publicly about a public document, a lawsuit, and trying to raise awareness about it. And, Logan Paul didn't like that very much.
Right.
I just think there's a little irony. Like, I used the mechanism and medium, that social media, that he's adept at.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting thing.
That video blew up, and that was before you took it down. It probably would have got even more views, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But honestly, dude, there's forever chemicals. I'm not saying it's in Prime, but there's forever chemicals in tap water. Like, it's pretty common that it's in stuff.
Absolutely.
People don't know that.
Yeah, and like what bugged me about the whole like controversy following my videos wasn't like the personal attacks on me. It wasn't the comments. It was the fact that like less people like cared about like what forever chemicals are and how prevalent they are and whether companies are doing anything about it. Like, that hasn't been focused on.
Yeah, not at all.
Which I know, like, in the social media world, like, I can't control like what catches people's attention, but as a trial lawyer who cares about this stuff, I'm like, guys, like,
Yeah.
focus on this.
Well, they just want the drama. They don't even
Right,
care about
exactly.
forever chemicals, which they should,
Exactly.
because that damages your health a lot.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's in a lot of tap water.
Yeah, that's what's crazy too. And I think like Logan Paul's video referenced, oh, well, we have these technologies like filtration systems. And if that's true, that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
I think that should be the standard for any beverage company,
For sure.
given that we know it's in tap water, right? If you like, you can only claim ignorance for so long and blame the tap water. Granted, you didn't put it there, but if you're going to sell products to people, you got to do something about it.
Yeah.
One question I had with Logan's was like, did you install, this is my lawyer brain.
Yeah.
Did you install that before or after you got sued? Because I do see a lot of times where there's big lawsuits involving chemical exposure or allegations, and the defendant does a bunch of stuff they could have done or should have done before the fact
Right.
in response.
That's true. Yeah. That's something a lawyer would notice. How many people are part of that class action? Did they publicize that number yet?
So by virtue of it being a class action, it covers, like it automatically covers anybody who fits within the definition of the class in the lawsuit. So the lawyer actually gets to define the class in the lawsuit. So the way I don't know what it is off the top of my head here, but usually it's defined by like any person aged blank through blank who drank Prime or drank this. They can define it any way they want, really.
Yeah.
But so it's definitely a lot of people.
Got it.
Yeah.
Did that lawyer who filed it reach out to you after your video?
No.
Oh, he didn't?
I sent the videos to him because I wanted him to be aware that they had been made, because, those are statements being made by a defendant in a lawsuit. Logan Paul's not a defendant. Prime Hydration is. But one of the heads of the company is making public statements that are directly relevant to that lawsuit.
Interesting. I wonder if this is the first lawsuit against a drink. Like Gatorade's huge. There's other big drinks.
That's a good question.
This is the first one I've seen, at least.
Yeah, and I think, there's all sorts of dyes in certain drinks.
Oh
and
my gosh.
Red dyes. I don't know if you like heard about all that.
Yeah, Red Dye 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's banned everywhere else, but not here. And that's just lobbying, right? Just paying off the right people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So big food and Western medicine all in bed.
They really are.
It's scary.
Well, one of the Gary Brecka, who I'm not, but he did a video on like the recommended diet for someone with diabetes, and I'm not an expert on this, but it was like all like bad food. I was like, what? Like
for diabetes?
Yeah, it was like orange juice, drink a glass of orange juice, and eat like a bagel, or I forget exactly, but it just struck me as like not what someone who's diabetic should be eating.
Interesting. Yeah, he is very polarizing. But I've done his health test and his blood test and his gene test, and I've seen results personally.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you big on like Eastern or do you lean more towards Western?
Like if I get like stabbed, I'm gonna go to the hospital.
Yeah.
But I think we've got it backwards in this country. I mean, I think we've totally got it backwards. We focus on treating a disease when the process that brought that disease about was like reversible or avoidable. We don't talk about that enough. I think it's shifting, like I think you and I talked about before we got on here, but like I'm very much about trying to prevent the problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tom, it's been fun, man. Anything you want to promote or close off with?
No.
Your law firm?
Bosworth Law is my law firm. So I'm on TikTok, on Tommy the Lawyer, and I have a real old school webpage.
Got it. We'll link it below. You take cases in PA, right?
Yep, and I get asked to represent people like across the country. So I do take cases on nationwide. I have to affiliate with whoever's like in that particular state, like a lawyer, but I'm able to do that too.
Cool. We'll link below. Thanks for coming on, man. That was fun.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching, guys, as always. See you tomorrow.